So I think that, emotions and feelings are very important. And they do help us adapt. And also, when I think about the word injustice, when we experience that sensation, when we think to ourselves, was there ever a time in our lives or somebody's life that we cared about where there was a significant or extreme injustice? We experience a lot of sensations in our bodies, right? And a lot of times that will actually have us act. It will motivate us or change the chemical biology in us to actually do something, to change the systems around us or the world or things like that. So that's important because, again, we're surviving, we're helping others survive. There's change, there's adaptability, and where we're at today, which is so amazing compared to 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Not that anybody was lesser than back then versus now, but without kind of that inspiration or that motivation or that longing or that excitement or whatever, we would just be humdrum robots that are like, whatever.
Today on the podcast, we have Kirsten Belaire and her most adorable little friend, Luna. How are you guys?
Good. We're very good. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the podcast, and I definitely appreciate you bringing a dog into the studio.
I know.
I wish we could have more.
I know, right?
Or just like a theme dog that's just kind of always floating around in here.
Actually, I think that's a brilliant idea.
And she's the perfect size for it, so.
Yes, but you can't steal her. I'm sorry.
Okay.
She's all mine.
Well, today on the show, we're going to talk about one big topic, but it's going to kind of branch out into a few other topics. The main one's going to be PTSD and how it shows up in couples or families. How do you feel about that topic?
Great. I mean, you're like, how do you feel about it? Well,
real quick, give a little bit of a background as to like why you're passionate about this and what makes you qualified to talk about it.
I've been in this role and working with Mount Carmel for 8 years, serving veterans in the community for about 12 years now.
Wow.
And grew up with a Vietnam veteran father who had PTSD.
Enough said.
And I think I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but my daughter's biological father, he was like active duty Air Force when 9/11 happened. And so he volunteered to be basically one of the first units to go and serve and deploy over there. So it was very fascinating to experience the person that I met before and then the person who came back. And I'm not diminishing or disrespecting. It was just very different. And then also my own journey from my own experiences in PTSD and how that just influences self and relationships, like in general, and just the trauma lens, the trauma lens. And so a lot of my experience and training has really been honing in on trauma and trauma work and addressing PTSD.
Okay. Because although you're not a veteran yourself, this is like, you're the perfect person to talk to about this because you've been on the other side of PTSD in a family, in a relationship, however you want to put it. But, we don't have to get into your story, but just speaking from experience and speaking from your education, which you passed by, you're very highly educated as well.
I mean, I have a master's degree, but
yeah, there you go.
I know.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. This is a very, unfortunate topic of discussion, but a very relevant topic of discussion. And I think we need to talk about this stuff because, I suffer from PTSD. I've been in relationships and I know I've put my partners through situations and, just energy levels that they didn't deserve. So I really want to talk about this because I know I'm probably not the only one who's been through this and they really just want to thrive and love in their relationships rather than be angry over dishes or simple stuff like that. So we're going to get to the bottom of it, hopefully in about an hour.
Okay.
But first, my interpretation of PTSD is that it's misunderstood or misdirected emotions. Post-traumatic stress is an emotion. And this is just my opinion here, but I think if we can better understand our emotions, we can better understand what this PTSD thing is, and then we can hopefully, kind of transform into a person we are more loving of, more in love with, rather than ashamed of.
Brilliant.
So let's
well
start.
said, sir.
Yeah, appreciate it.
You sure you don't have a master's degree in all this
No,
stuff?
definitely not.
Okay, well, that's a good statement.
I like reading and I like doing research. So,
Fair.
but I'm like my own test subject. So I'm like, how
Sure.
can I improve that area of my life?
Yep.
But let's start with like the most basic question. What is an emotion?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a pseudo difference-ish between emotions and feelings, but it just to encapsulate, because we typically use the term fluidly, like we'll say, I have this emotion or I have this feeling. And so let's just talk about it as one thing for now. So emotions or feelings are, the best way that I can describe it is we are biologically engineered to have feelings and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
End statement. The interesting thing is that when we're raised based on our family of origin and how we grew up, the caregivers, the family system around us, school, culture, things like that, then sometimes our emotions, which again, we're biologically engineered to have, that are natural in us, now become inconvenient or an annoyance to others or socially unacceptable. And so we're very early on taught how to either suppress, misdirect, or disconnect from our emotions. But I like to think of them too, and I love this, and I will always give credit where credit is due. One of my previous interns, he's very smart, and he's a veteran as well. And so we call him Baineisms. His name is Derek Bain, and he's actually a provider here in the community.
Okay.
But he said he was trying to like describe this exact thing. And so what he described it as is like, imagine in a home you have like a smoke detector, right? And so the smoke detector goes off. And a lot of times that's kind of like an emotion is a smoke detector. It's an indication, sometimes a warning, but think about it as like an indicator. It's like saying, hey, there's something happening. But if we treat emotions like, what am I trying to say? Like they're the fire, then we're going to have firemen coming to the house and literally hosing down a little piece of something on a wall that's dinging and not actually addressing the fire. Does that make sense?
I love a good analogy.
Yeah.
I need
so
to
thanks, Derek.
this.
You're awesome. But I like that because again, if we look at emotions and feelings as an indicator, it is just another part of our system that is trying to tell us something. And just like if you're walking and your ankle starts to tweak, it's like, hey, don't move too much or don't do this because then we're going to hurt or something, right? So yeah, I think emotions are really just meant to be indicators and just they're inputs and data to help us do this thing called life.
Yeah, for sure. I think at times emotions can be like out of proportion, but I think my way of defining it would be they're just normal responses to shifts in circumstances of some sort that we deem meaningful. And we can't really help it because there's a shift in circumstance. We deem that circumstance meaningful. And so we have a response to it. So you're kind of tying emotions and feelings together. Do you think they're separate?
The idea is that, let's say emotions are like that which we feel in our body. And then the feelings are the narration terminology, or kind of like you were saying, the meaning or whatever that we verbalize what we're feeling inside with. Right. So it's kind of like if you talk about a tree or something, you know, the emotions would be the trunk-ish, and then the feelings are more of all the other information input that we put into it.
Yeah. I mean, we could use your analogy. It's like the emotion is the smoke detector. The feelings are the flames.
Oh.
Do you like that?
Oh. Yeah, actually I do. I do kind of like that ish.
Or
yeah,
it's like,
depending. I think that actually the fire, what I might say is, yes, the emotion is the smoke detector.
it's the normal
feelings
response,
are how we're interpreting the signals that we're getting, and then what we do about it.
Okay.
So for example, when I think about veterans, let's say that they have an emotion or a feeling, emotion, and the smoke detector is going off and saying, hey, there's something happening. But in the military culture, the military says you do what with your emotions or feelings?
Push them down, ignore them, and get angry.
Yes. So basically they say, don't have them.
Right.
right? But the interesting thing is you actually have them no matter what. We always have them because, again, we're biologically engineered.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't bypass that. What you're doing instead is basically creating a disconnect between the emotion and then the processing or intake of data that emotion or feeling is trying to give you. So, for example, the feeling that you might have would be like the emotion is there's something off, there's something weird, there's something wrong.
Anxiety.
Could be anxiety.
Okay.
Could be fear. Could be a lot of things, right? And then your brain is going to interpret that and go, what is it? And then if it's an emotion that you're not supposed to have, then you either disconnect or redirect. And then the fire that the emotions or feelings are trying to say something about gets untended. Like it's not actually put out. And so then that fire just continues to rage and rage and rage and rage and rage, right?
Yeah. So then you might have objective feelings that come with that emotion of anxiety. So maybe like uneasiness, increased heart rate, like you're fidgety, like those are the feelings that are coming with it, right?
The sensations.
Yeah, the sensations, feelings.
Yeah, and your body literally, because again, we have parts of our brain that activate with emotional responses and trauma responses. And we also have the neurological synapses that are happening in your brain, but also the chemical reactions. And so, for example, when there's certain things that are happening, this could be the fight, flight, freeze type of response, our bodies get flooded with chemicals. And because they're designed to do that, to then do something. But if we don't do anything to burn through or express or outlet those chemicals or whatever, then it just kind of gets bottled up. And that's where some of the toxicity in our systems can potentially come from. Not saying all.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just thought of another analogy. If let's take an illness, you have the flu. The flu is the emotion. The feelings would be the symptoms, such as fever, chills, sweats. I'm just trying to, I love analogies and it makes for great explanations.
Doesn't it? Okay, if we did the flu analogy, I guess what I'm thinking of is, let's say the flu is your body identifying the virus or whatever and going, okay, there's something here.
The signal.
And then your feelings are potentially the symptoms saying, hey, yes, we're not feeling well. There's something going on. We're congested. We have whatever happening, or it could be stomach stuff, right? And if we just absolutely ignored that, I mean, I think about, okay, here's an analogy. Imagine that you have the stomach flu and you get on a plane and literally act like nothing is wrong. Is your body going to take over? Oh, yeah,
yes,
it will.
For sure.
Your body will win.
Yeah.
And then the people who are sitting in the chair next to you are like, oh my grossness.
Ooh, I really love this analogy.
Okay. So again, because we're not paying attention to the indicators and not addressing what's actually happening and what our emotions or feelings are trying to tell us, which is potentially you're kind of feeling sick. You may or may not want to actually take said flight, or you may or may not want to wear some Depends, or you may or may not want to take some medicine to do something regarding it, to address it. So
Man, that was great. Let me just recap that because that was a really good analogy. So having the flu is like having an emotion. The feelings that come with the emotion is like the fever, chills, and the symptoms that come with the flu. If you take that flu and go get on a plane without dealing with your flu, you're going to get everyone else on the plane sick. Just like in real life, if you take your emotion and now go out into your family life or friend network, you're going to spread that emotion. So if you're stressed, if you're angry, if you're feeling some kind of, negative emotion and you don't deal with it, it's going to spread just like you're going to get everyone sick on the plane.
Potentially.
Man, that was great.
Yeah. Except for I can say, and this is interesting, I don't know that we can catch emotions necessarily, but our emotional states absolutely can impact or influence others. But one of the terms that many of us are very familiar with is he made me feel, she made me feel. And in our psychology world, we actually try and get a little bit away from that, because basically what happened was he or she did something. There was a stimulus or an event. And how I respond to that is not them making me. It is literally my own internal interpretation and meaning making of that that then I experience, right? Like more specifically the feeling. So the emotion might be like the distress or this discomfort or the whatever. And then our brains are like, okay, I need to like put this into actual terminology and words. I'm feeling shamed or embarrassed or judged or whatever. And then from that, now I'm going to have a response, which is potentially shut down, get angry, yell, cry, run away, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's important to have, and I don't have this mastered by any means. I would doubt anyone truly does, but extreme accountability of your emotions. Oh, yeah. No one, whether they're good or bad, can make you feel a certain way.
Yes.
I think we think that.
Yeah.
And at times it seems that way, but that would be, the top tier of self-awareness, in my opinion. If you have extreme accountability of your own emotions, meaning someone cannot make me sad, nor happy, nor angry. But if I choose to feel happy around this person because they're, we get along, they make me feel accepted, I make them feel accepted, they listen to me, I now feel happy around this person. But if someone, on the contrary, is screaming and yelling and they're clearly stressed out, they're very frantic in all that they're doing, they can't make me feel stressed out also. Right. But I can visually see that they have the flu and I'm on their plane and I want to stay away from them.
Yeah. So maybe you put on your mask or
exactly.
you use your little hand sanitizer. Yeah. And one of the things that you had mentioned, Taylor, which was great, was like the ultimate rung is the accountability for our emotions. But I think there's a rung that gets skipped a little bit or maybe not put into the light as much as it could be, which is being able to just name or identify or language the sensations that we're actually experiencing. And so what that means is that I work with a lot of people who their emotional vocabulary is a few words, right? Because that's all that they've really been able to language. And so if you ask, so how does that make you feel? Typical counselor thing, right? But how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
You might get like annoyed,
right,
or weird. But if you actually gave them the verbiage and said, tell me what you feel. I've had people come out with 10, 15 different feelings, which is meaning to me, that translates to, although you might have one word, there's actually a whole cacophony happening within us. And so to get to that highest rung, we've got to be able to language and identify sensations so that we understand them. And once we understand them, then can come the accountability and the better choice making or response to these indicators that are going, hey, something's happening.
How do we kind of refine that skill? Because this is never taught to us. We're never taught like, hey, you're feeling sadness, and when you're sad, you should do this. Or when you're feeling overly excited, you need to do this. We're never taught.
Actually, I would say you're right. You're not taught. You're corrected away from. Like
or
when
shown
we're young,
examples of.
Yes. But like, for example, like when we're young, if you're crying and your parents don't think that it's a valid reason for you to be crying, they say what?
Stop crying. Go to your room.
Yeah.
Be quiet.
Yeah.
Or they shove a ball in your mouth.
Or they shove a butt. Okay, Taylor. So that shares a little bit of information. All right. Downloading now.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you're feeling angry, what do they say?
They de-justify your anger.
Yeah. Right.
Or devalidate it. Yeah.
So again, even from when we're little, we are taught to not be exploratory and not really give names or honor or validate our own internal experiences, period. Not always, but a lot of families and society says this too, right? Which makes sense because, for example, when we're at work, I don't know about you, but I would prefer to not work with somebody who is raging and yelling at me. So yes, we need to manage that a bit.
For sure.
But at the same time, does that also mean that I'm giving this message of you shouldn't be feeling that? And I can't tell you the amount of relationships where the other person in the relationship is like, they shouldn't feel that. They shouldn't think that.
Right.
That's not real. That's not true. Which invalidates what we're feeling and thinking anyway.
So we'll get into like, coping mechanisms with emotions, and then we're going to get into that. But just going back, like from why do we feel emotions from a adaptive evolutionary aspect or lens? Why do we even feel emotions?
Yeah.
What are they good for? What do we used to use them for?
Right. The way that I like to think of it is, and we're just going to go back to basics, right? The emotion, the sensation of attraction and lust does what for the species?
Makes more of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important that we experience that. If somebody or something is violating our boundaries or potentially a harm to us, we might respond with what?
Retaliation of some sort.
Or aggression or whatever.
Anger.
Yeah. Because again, it's kind of like the survival piece or things like that. To feel affinity or love, whether it's for a child or somebody in the family or people that we're close to or that we're loving, why is that helpful? Let's see, I'm making you do all the answers. I'm making you work.
I think it gives us a sense of security.
And connectedness.
Yeah.
Because if we were all alone, like literally all alone as a species, we would not be able to procreate and we probably wouldn't be able to really survive. Right?
Yeah.
And so we've had communities and tribes. And for the social constructs now, as evolution and people have evolved, now we have the social constructs, which is shame or embarrassment, helps to curb or adjust somebody's behaviors or choices. And societally speaking, that's important because if we need to all live together and function together, there's certain instincts or impulses that would not be conducive to the group.
For sure.
Right? So we might feel shame or embarrassment or things like that to try and change those behaviors. So I think that, emotions and feelings are very important and they do help us adapt. And also, if we think about, when I think about the word injustice, when we experience that sensation, when we think to ourselves, was there ever a time in our lives or somebody's life that we cared about where there was a significant or extreme injustice? We experience a lot of sensations in our bodies, right? And a lot of times that will actually have us act. It will motivate us or change the chemical biology in us to actually do something. To change the systems around us or the world or things like that. So that's important because again, we're surviving, we're helping others survive. There's change, there's adaptability, and where we're at today, which is so amazing compared to 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Not that anybody was lesser than back then versus now, but without kind of that inspiration or that motivation or that longing or that excitement or whatever, we would just be humdrum robots that are like, whatever.
It's like motives and consequences or threats have changed as we've evolved. The consequences of, life change and our emotions are now redirected towards those things. I'll just use technology as an example. Like today, maybe all generations, but specifically younger generations, like, man, not enough people liked that picture on Face Space or whatever they are.
Is there a Face Space, by the way?
I don't have social media. I don't know.
I was going to say, is that a new one? Because I haven't heard of that one.
Facebook, right.
That thing. MySpace, Facebook.
Anyways, no one,
gotcha.
Yeah, I put something on the internet and no one liked it.
Yeah.
Whereas like that person's great, whatever was, struggling to grow crop in the fields because it hasn't rained in 2 years.
Yep.
So like how have we gotten there? And now we have these like almost out of proportional reactions to something that seems so simple. Like the farmer back in the day is like, you guys have what? Cell phones? And you can just call each other and take pictures. Like, I don't know. I have a hard time digesting it because it makes life today in all its greatness seem so silly.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's what.
Which is why I deleted social media.
Okay, fair. So I think about like the farmer 200-300 years ago or whatever. I would say, again, I'm not there and I don't necessarily have studies to back this up, but I would say that it's more than likely that they had emotional or like emotional responses that were, what is the word you used?
Like out of proportion?
Yes,
or just grand?
definitely out of proportion to what was actually happening, right? There have been people raging and violating and being violent and raping and pillaging and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and it may or may not be because of a specific stimulus that then they're responding to, right? So I think it's a human condition to have responses that are out of proportion or not in sync with the actual event first. So second, though, it's interesting that you point out, like, why would somebody rage over the fact that their cell phone bill wasn't paid and now they don't have their cell phone and they're shitting bricks, versus if, somebody's parents were murdered and all this kind of stuff back in the day. Like those things don't seem to compute, but yet you're getting this rageful, like,
same
type
emotion.
Right. It's because, again, we're biologically engineered to feel these emotions, and these emotions aren't necessarily picky about the stimulus necessarily. It's just a sensation that we experience. And then again, what we do with that, the meaning making or the translating it into certain feelings or whatever, that's from where we respond. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of like another way to put it, which is also perspective. So back in the day, before there were cell phones, people connected usually by town gatherings or going and visiting your neighbor or things like that, right? But imagine now somebody who gets excluded and isolated and nobody wants to talk to anymore. That person is going to have extreme responses potentially. And now we're looking in 2025 and you have cell phones, which equate to connection, potentially worth, value, and things like that. And so now you're going to take that away, and that person is experiencing this potential sensation of absolute fear, isolation. Central nervous system might be like, if you're all alone, you're going to die. Even though we know from some perspectives, it's just a phone, to that person's system and makeup and reinforcement of this device, it can actually mean other things. Yeah.
It just clicked for me with that another analogy. So yeah, the person who is now feeling isolated or not good enough because they didn't get likes on Facebook is feeling that desertedness of the farmer back in the day when no one was helping him with his crop that hadn't grown in 2 years. It's the same. Yeah, we started out talking about misunderstood and misdirected emotions. That's what it is. It's these, thousands of year old emotions. That wasn't worded properly. Very old emotions that have been part of us as humans since the very essence of us. It's how we started, right? Now it's just evolved to technology. Yeah, that was interesting. I don't have words for it yet, but you made it click for me.
Yeah. Good. I will say too that, and I love it what you just said, which is, yes, that basically we've had these potentially sensations. Now we can have different sensations as we evolve, blah, blah, blah. But since we've had these sensations for a long time, again, just our languaging and the time and space that we have today to actually just explore and analyze and psychoanalyze and learn more and research and stuff means that our understanding and vocabulary and meaning making around emotions and feelings is so much more, I guess, advanced, but I would just say we just have so much more opportunity. Whereas back in the day, and I'm thinking about like 500 years ago, a very poor person in a big city didn't have the time or the space or the capacity to just sit and be like, I wonder what I'm feeling right now, or I wonder how this might turn out, or I wonder what they think about me. They're like, I need to survive.
Right.
And that's what they had to focus on. Like that's where all their energy stores went to. Whereas now we're in a society where things are easier, not for everybody, I get that, but are more available to us. And so we have now the time and freedom. And I think about this too, historically, like when we think about the great inventors, and I'm talking like hundreds and hundreds of years back or whatever, even, Roman and Egyptians and stuff. A lot of times the people who were known for their thinking or their philosophy or their discoveries or their inventions typically were from very wealthy families because they actually had the space, capacity, and time to explore and think because all of their other needs and base needs were met. Whereas again, the servants or the people who had to do so much just to survive and eat a little bit that day or whatever, don't have that mind space.
Right.
Like the real estate wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Surviving versus thriving. They were thriving, so they were able to think more.
I love that. See, look at that. Succinct, well put. Thank you, sir.
I like it.
I think you should translate for me. You can sit in on sessions with me and you can be like, okay, this is what she actually said.
Yeah.
2 words. Okay, great. Thanks.
You did say something interesting though, like they didn't have time back in the day to wonder what people were thinking about them. And today it seems like that's all people are thinking about. So how do you think we transition to that? I'm just curious. I wasn't even planning on asking you this, but I just think it's a huge problem. People are very concerned with what others think of them. And so they're not even like being themselves, like quite literally. And I feel like I can figure out when I'm talking to someone this way. They're saying what they think you want to hear. They're acting the way you want them. They think you want them to act. It's just, it's very not genuine, if there's a word for that. And I just, more than ever, I crave being around people who are genuinely themselves. Like I just want to get to know you. I want to feel your emotions. I want to hear your story. I don't want you to cater that to what you think I think or want to hear. So how do you think we've gotten here?
Well, and so I'm glad that you actually said the first part, because if I want to make a clarification, I think absolutely that people back in the day did care about what others thought to a degree. And what I mean by that is, if what other people thought about them impacted their ability to survive, then it really, really mattered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
But when thinking about, excuse me, in a family system, I don't know that people had the time, space, or mental capacity to be able to go, you know what? I think I may want to take some parenting classes because I'm just not exactly sure about how I'm really treating my kids, right? To me, it was more potentially, and again, I'm speaking for people who are no longer here, and I could be very wrong, but it was potentially more of a, this is just how you do it. And you just replicate and repeat so that your energy and mental capacity is on the things that actually keep you alive or get the job done or, pay the bills or get food on the table. Does that make sense?
For sure it does.
So I think that they do care. I think nowadays, I'm a little like, do I want to say this? But
probably.
Taylor just said he enjoys people who are willing to, in my interpretation, ruffle feathers. And just be real and genuine. So
is being real and genuine ruffling feathers though? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think it does. And really? I think that that's what keeps people from being real and genuine, because they're first taught, don't ruffle feathers. Think about it in school. Don't ruffle feathers. Don't disobey. Don't disagree. Don't have a temper tantrum. Don't anything. So yeah.
Okay, I like that.
It's kind of taught and conditioned out of us.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
About ruffling feathers?
Yeah. Or go on with what you're going to say. Sorry.
What I'm going to say next is very much influenced by Kirsten. And so I say it's anecdotal, meaning what I have personally observed, experienced, learned. So take that with a gallon of freaking salt, right?
Sounds genuine.
So what I'm making up about the situation with social media, cell phones, TikTok, do people like me, all that kind of stuff, right? I think that media, phones, computers, or whatever, were essentially, the concept was potentially like, let's connect. I'm feeling alone and isolated. And I think for most everybody, we all long for connectedness and acceptance, period. And so now these tools have become ways or pathways for us to do so, to feel not so alone, right? The squishy is that when we use these devices, it is not even remotely the same as it is when you sit across from somebody else and you get to see the finite way that their eyes move, adjust, eyebrows, even the body language, the smell, the just sensation, the energy. You cannot experience that via a screen of any sort. And so I think that there's still this longing, this need that is being unmet fully from devices or screens. And so people are like trying to ramp up, like, well, maybe if it's more, then it will speak differently to the core beliefs that I have about myself, because what I want more than anything is for me and people to think that I am worthy of being delighted in and chosen. And whatever external data that I can get to try and reinforce that or tell me that, that's what I need and what I long for. Probably because I had a painful learning or a wounding or a trauma that said otherwise when I was how old, right? So we're trying to use this modality to get a need met. And the best way I can describe it is like, okay. I'm going to use the window shopping just because I loathe window shopping, but people love window shopping. So I don't want to shame that. But imagine you're super freaking hungry, right? And you walk by a restaurant, we've all done it, and you smell the food and you're like, snap, that smells so good. And you're hungry. All right. And so you go in and you order the food and you're so excited. And then what they do is they bring out the food with this like plexiglass partition, and literally you cannot access the food. You're supposed to eat it.
This is sick.
Right? But you can't access it. Like that's sometimes what I think about with social media screens. Not again to shame it, because it is an element of connection. Like my brother lives in Saudi Arabia. He's lived there since 1999. Without this type of stuff, we would be super disconnected. But it is not the same as when I have my brother visiting and I get to hear his laugh and see his wrinkles as he's so fucking funny. And, you know, sometimes like depending on our size or our build, when you can see people's bellies, mine's doing it now, where when they laugh at like kind of like jolly old Chris, wow. I was like jolly Saint Nicholas or jolly old, and then Santa Claus, what the fudge ever.
Anyways.
but it is different, right?
It is different.
And so again, I don't want to shame it. It's just, it's not giving us what we need and what we truly, truly long for. And this is where, and I'm not attempting in any way to shame the choices that people make. What I've noticed though is like people who go to gaming and it gets to a point where it's not just a release or a temporary escape. It becomes a whole world where many of the waking hours are gaming. And so you get a little bit of social in that, but you're also getting all of this distraction from the actual game and playing. And I see them really struggling to come out into real life and have the social skills that they need, B, have the confidence in themselves, and C, have the fruitful or the ability to engage in fruitful relationships, you know? So again, I'm not trying to shame it. It's just within moderation or understanding where certain things we're doing or not doing are either benefiting or harming us.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. And that analogy with the restaurant and the plexiglass was really good.
I know, right?
That was a good one. I didn't know where you were going with it until, man, that was a good one.
Thank you.
USAA is celebrating over 100 years of service to our military community. In 1922, it was a group of soldiers that started USAA to insure each other's vehicles when no one else would. Since then, USAA has grown to over 13 million members strong, and through it all, one thing has remained. USAA is still serving the military community and their families. With their launch of Face the Fight Coalition to counter veteran suicide, we are proud to have USAA as a sponsor of the Veterans Voice podcast. So let's talk about, we're going to get into PTSD in couples. The last thing I want to ask you about is about coping mechanisms as an individual, which we kind of touched on. You know, it starts with awareness, but how do we better deal with our emotions as an individual so we're not the sick person on a plane getting everyone sick?
Yeah. So it's interesting because what you just said, my brain went to, there's a few things about how we even term what we're going to do with our emotions. So for example, you said, how do we deal with them? And to me, that infers that it is something to be dealt with versus
accept.
How can I understand and have a better relationship with my emotions?
That was the military in me coming out. Deal with your emotions and get back to work.
Yes, literally, right? Exactly.
Never saying that again.
He's like extricated from the vocabulary.
I do that. It's gone.
But so let's say we're not dealing with them. Let's say that we want to just become curious. Curiosity is, to me, the first step. And then being able to identify in language. And sometimes that might take a counselor to help you. Sometimes it might take family members. You can literally Google like feelings wheel.
I've seen it.
Yeah. And just start to, again, put language to the sensations that you're having internally when we think about emotions. And then to a degree, helping our relationship with our emotions reduce stigma, reduce negativity. So for example, I remember this was a long time ago. I was in therapy and doing just internal work. And I realized that the message I was operating under was that anger was bad. And I know that this was influenced by culture, influenced by my gender and roles, and then also by being raised religious. It was like anger was bad. And I remember finally asking myself, why? Why is anger bad? Is there not ever an anger that's good? And I was like, as I started to stretch my thinking there and become more flexible, I realized, yeah, anger is good. Let me explain. When you're a parent and somebody's not treating your kid well, I have an absolute righteous sense of anger. Do I have to go and mutilate said other potential child that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing because their brains aren't developed? No, but I'm angry for a reason. And so my relationship changes and I'm like, I get it. I'm angry because this is not okay. That now can help me do something about it to change something, right? Or to protect my kid or whatever.
For sure.
So what again was it?
Just coping mechanisms. How do we deal with our emotions?
Yep, okay.
And there was quotes there. I just wanted to repeat myself one more time.
If people didn't see quotes. So, and here's the other thing too. I have my own little world, Taylor, that I live in my head,
That's
clearly. And in this world, I've noticed that when I think about the word coping, what I think about is I have a garden and I have weeds in my garden and they are growing. And coping to me is I'm going out into my garden and I'm taking the little shears and I'm just shearing off little branches of the weeds. We can do that for the rest of our lives. Yes. And so maybe the weeds don't get as high or don't get as big. Okay, fine. But in my world, what I want to do is if I don't want a specific weed, even though there's some weeds that are freaking beautiful, if I don't want that weed, I want to be able to take it and like uproot it, remove it, plant something that I do want. So when I think about coping with our emotions, instead, what I want is a life that says my emotions are indicators and they're bringing me information and they don't have to be a threat. So with said information, now I can make more informed decisions and be more authentic and honest and potentially take more risks because I'm not the emotion of fear, the feeling of fear is not driving me anymore. It's just indicating to me, you're a little scared right now. And I'm like, yeah, because I took that corner too fast. Smart, Kier. So next time slow down or something, right?
So just viewing emotions as indicators to do something.
Yes.
I like that. And that's what anxiety is, in my opinion. I have a good definition I thought of the other day.
Yes.
Where did I write this? A normal reaction to important circumstances that are potentially threatening. But that threatening aspect of it can be anything. And I feel like a lot of times in life, anxiety is just telling us that we need to do something and then we don't know what to do. So then we numb it with everything we just talked about, video games, social media, etc., seeking validation. And then we don't deal with the thing we're anxious about, whether or not we even identify what we're anxious about, but we don't do the thing our body is telling us to do. Right.
We don't honor and respect and live symbiotically with our body. The other thing too that you just said, and I think this goes into relationships, you said we don't do something with it, but actually I would say we're not only, we're not using them as indicators, but one of the things that we do is we also transfer. So not just numbing, as you said, we literally transfer. So what I mean by that is, if I'm in a relationship and my partner is coming at me sideways because they had a bad day,
Mm-hmm.
right? If my anger or whatever, I'm just like, you made me feel angry, right? And then you're now the problem.
Right.
So that like inhibits me from being able to just journey through the entirety of the journey of exploring my anger. Whereas instead, what if I'm angry because you're coming at me sideways? It's been a long day, but I'm also angry because you're reminding me of the way that my dad used to come at me, or the way that somebody who really hurt me came at me. And you know what the truth is? That may be accurate, but it may not be fully accurate. So what is really happening? And why am I responding in turn? Like, why is this indicator coming up? Again, maybe it's because I have other stuff that I have unresolved that I'm not dealing with, or stuff that's getting in the way. Like, for example, maybe I'm afraid that you're coming at me sideways. That because you're coming at me sideways, my fear is you're going to leave me, or I'm not going to be good enough for you. And so that means I'm going to be alone. And that's scary. Like all of this stuff, which gets in the way of me being able to have you come home at me sideways and be like, damn, you had a hard day. Do you need anything?
Yeah.
I had a fucking great day. But whatever. Like it meshes and it gets all.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's
a technical term.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
You can keep that up.
That's a great segue into, PTSD, unidentified, undealt with emotions that are fostering within us. How does it present into our relationships, our wives, our husbands, our parents, our children, especially? How does this start to show up, and how do we get a finger on it, get a hold of it?
Yep. So with PTSD, the biggest thing is when we have trauma reactions, right? Our frontal lobe, which is more of like the identify this feeling and I'm going to do this about it instead of this urge or whatever, that gets shut down and we go back into our ancient brain, right? So our limbic system, amygdala, all that kind of stuff that addresses the central nervous system. When that floods, then we are in fight, flight, freeze. And so there's no rational to the feeling or emotion or experience or sensation. We are just angry. We're ready to fight, or we're ready to flight, right? Or we're ready to freeze, or things like that. So those trauma responses show up in relationship because also our brain perceives threat when there's not actually a threat, right? So for example, Taylor, you might remind me of somebody who did me extreme harm, right? Just because of your beard, you don't, but just because of your beard, right? So I see you, and then I get a trauma response, and all of a sudden I am ready to lay into you and fight. But you didn't actually do anything to me, which is why it's so confusing. Why am I having this internal extreme response to somebody just looking at me?
Yeah.
Right? In relationships, that's really confusing. And especially because in relationships, we've gotten into the cycle of, well, you are why I feel this, and vice versa. So if you would just get your shit together, I would feel better, and vice versa. We do this cycle. So when you're angry and you're having a trauma response, it must be my fault, or it's all you, instead of just looking at it as a, wow, your brain totally went offline there, right? And for that person to actually do the work and get the treatment to help their brain and their central nervous system go back to baseline, to where they're not responding to stimulus as a threat when it's not really a threat. Does that?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know how we end up that way. How do we end up in that, I had a great day, you had a horrible day. How do we not even meet in the middle, but how do we get the bad day up to the good day? Because I feel like oftentimes, husband has a bad day, wife has a good day. It's like the wife's coming down, right?
Yep.
This is just like a typical story, right? Excuse me. Or vice versa, of course. So how do we change that? How do we understand that deeper so that, hey, my wife is having a bad day, I've had a good day. How do I help her and not seem like I'm attacking her or just another factor in her bad day?
Yep. Okay, so what you just asked has in my opinion, a lot of caveats and side roads. So I'm going to try and be a little succinct. First off, the concept that if somebody has a bad day, they need to come up is very, it's cultural in a way, but it's also like, why do they have to come up? Why can they not just have a bad day? Honestly. Well, because usually it puts the other person out. Like the other person's like, you're bumming me out. Oh, so then my feelings about having a bad day put you out. And so now I have to change how I feel. First. Second, when you were saying, what if you're having an up day and the person's having a down day? We don't necessarily want to lose that joy, right? We want to celebrate and amplify the joy and excitement that we can have in life, because sometimes it's so dang humdrum. So instead of having to feel like you have to bring yourself down to meet this person, this is where having more than one person in your life is critical, so that your spouse is not the only person who has to meet you no matter where you're at. That's exhausting and draining. So this is where if you're having a really good day and your spouse is unable to really just celebrate with you, this is where you're calling your friends, calling your family, maybe if you're on social media posting, whatever, but just going, yes, I'm so excited. And you're not robbing yourself. Right. But you're also respecting the fact that so-and-so had a tough day and they might need space. The other thing too is, I feel like more than anything, if we're like bad day, good day or whatever, what we long for is just to feel connected no matter where we're at. So knowing, Taylor, that you care about the fact that I had a bad day and you would allow me to kind of process it, and you can ask me to be succinct because I'm going to talk too much. Okay. Sure. So you can ask me to be succinct, and then I just feel like I'm witnessed in this of my day, right? And vice versa. If you had a great day, hopefully I would be able to, even if I'm having a bad day, I could still like go, okay, indicating bad day. Yes. Need to process that. Yes. Can we put you on the shelf just for a minute? Because I want to celebrate, because Taylor had such a great day. So excited. Let's celebrate with you. Right. So there's ways to manage, because now we're not being driven by emotions. We're being informed by emotions. And it is really helpful sometimes to be able to have a window in your day to be able to clean and clear things out, to where you can potentially show up for your spouse or your family differently. Like if you've had a really tough day, maybe you need to take a half hour or something and really just validate that you've had a tough day. Maybe you need to process, maybe you need to vent, maybe you need to scream, maybe you need to listen to fucking hard rock. I don't know, but just releasing some of that to where when you show up, you can show up a little bit more clean and clear. But what I am not saying is repressing, ignoring, and avoiding. I'm saying use those indicators, do something with them so that you can show up the way that you're wanting to.
Yeah, I really like that. Thanks for explaining. I think my biggest takeaway of that is you have other people. We talk about community on the podcast all the time. It's probably getting old at this point, but I think a good kind of self-check, I did this not too long ago, but how many people do I have in my phone that I could call right now and ask about their week and it wouldn't be weird?
Yeah.
And I think if that number is kind of scary low, just work on getting that up, and you'll be surprised, because other people, like you've said this entire hour, people are also longing for that connectedness. So you start having these regulars that you call. Monday I got Tina, Tuesday I got Joey, blah, blah, blah. I'm asking about their weeks. Man, your life will change. So I think that's a good place to start. Just check yourself. Where's your community? How much community do you have? Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
Luna, you're sleeping down there.
I know. But you guys didn't get to hear some of the piggy noises.
She's so cute. Well, thanks for coming on the Veterans Voice podcast, talking about some very relevant issues. And we'll have you on again soon to further elaborate.
Sounds good.